Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this Beyond Legacy Pathways to Complex Migrations and Minimizing Technical Debt. Today, I'm together with two amazing people here, two amazing speakers. I have Arthur from KeyData and Nitin from Saviynt. I'm your host, Henrique Teixeira. I also work at Saviynt. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategy over there. So one of the things that I talk about is how we can modernize, how can we deliver better identity security to our clients. So, and of course, full disclosure, KeyData and Saviynt, we are partners. We have a technical alliance with those guys. And let me start by introducing the amazing speakers we have for the conversation today. Let me start with Arthur. Arthur, please introduce yourself. Tell a little bit about you. What do you do at KeyData?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Enrique. And yeah, good morning, good afternoon to everyone, wherever you're joining from. Yeah, my name is Arthur Wojcicki. I'm a Director of Delivery Services here at KeyData Cyber. Have been working in the IGA IAM space for a little over a decade now. And my bread and butter is essentially planning, organizing, and executing legacy migrations to modern solutions. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about MIM today and how Saviynt would be a good replacement and kind of the benefits and such. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today with yourself, Henrique, Nitin, and everybody else to share some insights and hopefully set you on your journey to make it as smooth as possible.
Thank you, Arthur. Nitin.
Hi, this is Nitin Goyal. I'm VP of Expert Services with Saviynt. I've been with Saviynt for 10 years now, and I've been in IT space for more than 20 years. A lot of experience with Saviynt customers, migrating them off of legacy platforms, MIM and Oracle and others. And looking forward to share, what I've learned over the years, and I hope that you can take something from today's conversation.
Thank you. So as you guys see, I don't know how many years combined we have here in experience in this identity landscape, but I can imagine if you joined this session today that you are curious about what can I do with the technical debt that I have, with the changing environment of all the new stuff coming in, AI, you name it, right? So how can we be ready for the future? And how can we be free from this legacy and be more proficient in solving identity security and identity challenges of the future, right? With that, on the next slide, let me introduce this problem statement, right? Because it's something very common. It is a traditional challenge in projects in IGA in general, but I'd love to hear what our speakers have to share here. I have statistics. For example, there was a survey from the Forbes magazine that engineers in general, they spend 33% of their time, 33% of their time dealing with technical debt alone. And that, of course, applies to identity, applies to IGA, applies to access management, MFA, all this good stuff, right? So can you imagine a third of a day of an engineer and their jobs, they're dealing with technical debt, right? So what's pushing this today? Let me start with Arthur here. So Arthur, what do you think it's pushing here? I know there's some announcements from Microsoft as well, right? With end of life. So can you share with the audience here a little bit what's going on in this identity space that is pushing our listeners and ourselves to be ready for these challenges? 1/3 of our day dedicated to technical debt, which for me is a lot.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think partially why people might be on here with their interest in MIM is obviously that it is reaching end of life. But that technical debt piece, I think it stems a lot from things like heavy customizations and ultimately knowing where to start to be able to actually unravel and plan for a migration. I imagine that most organizations, have built up these complexities in their systems over time because they wanted to meet the needs of the business. Those requests have come in. They've customized their solution to a place where now it's becoming very scary to migrate and plan for, but at the same time, you're almost now being forced because of this deadline that's approaching, right? And out of any cost that you spend to maintain that with your workforce capital, like you mentioned, 33% of engineers, upkeeping that, maintaining that, any dollars spent on that between now and 2029 essentially is a drop in the bucket because it's going to be an unsupported platform as of 2029. So the risk will completely be with the clients who still are on MIM post 2029.
So the date is January 2029?
Correct. And that day was actually extended because of a lot of customers, I'm going to say indirect complaints about, we're not ready, we're not prepared, where do we start? And a lot of those clients are in regulated industries as well. So their plan of approach is that much more, I'd say, a little bit difficult to map out accordingly. So they've been given an extension of 3 years. So hopefully the sense of urgency is there.
It feels like Black Sabbath rather than the final tour. I said, no, this is the real final tour. Now this year is the final tour. So yeah, it looks like 2029 is already a postponed date, which may be coming faster than we think, right? If you think about how long it takes to assess environments, understand the complexity of our environments, and choose partners to do the migration, partners like KeyData, right? Choose the vendors, choosing what's the next technology going to look like. 4 years or 3 years, right? If we put in a calendar planning for 3 years, it's not that much. What do you think, Nitin? Any other experiences that we've been seeing at Saviynt as well? So what's the typical project looks like? What is the driver that is pushing those clients to try to shift or move to something different?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, to understand a little bit more about the technical debt, right? We talk about end of life for MIM, right? But it's the entire stack if you look at it holistically. MIM and legacy platforms are deployed on legacy, infrastructure as well. So what keeps, R&D owners of those platforms up in the night is my Windows servers going out of life, out of support? Is my MySQL going out of life, out of support, right? Or my SharePoint foundation is out of support, and any other component that is in the environment. Other aspect is over a period of time, I think like Arthur was alluding, companies have built fit gap solutions, right, to address the gaps in that MIM couldn't support. So that's also part of the tech debt because now there are point solutions addressing some problems, and where do you go with that as well, correct? And I think customization is for sure. Microsoft provided a lot of functionality to customize MIM, and back in the day when I was a developer, we used to love that capability, how we can customize it. But now, where we are today, it becomes more of a pain to manage the customization, lack of documentation around what was done, and how do you maintain it on an ongoing basis? Right, that's a problem. So, and I think you brought up a good point, which we hear a lot from customers. Debt. I mean, there's a technical debt, but what's the impact of technical debt on people, right? You have the team supporting the technical debt. They could be spending more time supporting your key business initiatives instead of doing what they're doing today. They should be spending more time learning new technologies, looking for how to future safe your environment. But your cost and your time and effort is more going towards supporting system of past, right? So I think in our conversation with customers, these are the key points that come up, that impact their cost, their ability to support their business, as well as I think the security aspect of it, because the need to continuously patch environment with security patches kind of leaves a huge gap, and kind of extends your threat landscape.
Yeah, and I remember the other day you and I were talking right at work, and I was shocked when you told me how frequent we come across MIM, right? And no demerit, it's perhaps a compliment, if you will, because it's such an integrated solution to Active Directory. And we know Active Directory is one of those things that people say, oh, it's going to be dead by end of the year. But it's a long tail of AD, domain controllers out there, and MIM attaches to that. I want to ask you a question, because the way I summarize what you guys said, right? And you said you used to be a developer, you are implementing those customizations yourself. I think let's talk about the reason. Why do we see organizations finding themselves in that situation today, right? I think there are three steps, right? One is their business processes are complex. Right? Organizations, the way they approve things, the way the workflows work are quite complex. Number two, they come across technologies that are very flexible. You basically can write code to address all this complexity. But also number three, and this is a controversial one, I think us, and by us I mean service integrators like KeyData and technology providers, we accept that complexity face value, and we just code. We just code and we don't fight back. So this might be a controversial type of opinion here, but because use cases are complex, and because technology can accommodate custom code, and because integrators don't push back typically, we find ourselves with this huge amount of technical debt. I know it may be a hot take, but I want to see what do you think, Arthur? Let me start with you this time.
Yeah, I mean that's undeniable. I think that you know, that technical debt from that kind of the set it and forget it. When an organization finally realizes that, hey, we need, somebody who knows what they're doing, like a system integrator like KeyData, leveraging to migrate over to a technology like Saviynt that's modern, gives us all these bells and whistles. The problem there is that the mindset of those organizations typically has been, we need to meet the demands and asks of the business at all costs because they're our moneymaker. But now we're seeing a shift where it's actually becoming an issue because organizations are bleeding money with the amount of human capital they need to maintain to upkeep those environments. And getting complacent with their set it and forget it mindset. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Which we always see that. And to your point, like PowerShell can help you do anything for the most part. And if you have that ingrained in your kind of ways to do workarounds, make legacy systems like a MIM do what you want the business to do, then that, day by day, year over year, that is the biggest impact to increasing your technical debt, right? And are we going to be able enough to shift the mindset to take like a holistic view and be like, wait, what are we doing? Does this make sense? And how are we going to change it to migrate to something that still meets our business needs, knowing that you will need to have a change in mindset and get your business folks and your user base on board with that?
Very well. Nitin, what do you think?
Absolutely,
I think integrators are just accepting, yeah, I'll solve this with code, man, and I'll get this done.
Absolutely. I think it's about, if you look at it, right, MIM is looked as a IT tool to automate, access provisioning and synchronize directories, right? So it's not looked at as a business enablement tool or, tool that would have a wide impact on the users. So as an owner of the tool, I have the capability to, write the logic, meet the business requirement. And that's what I would probably do, right? If that's what I have to manage. And given the lack of capabilities when it comes to addressing modern use cases and make the tool more configurable, right? You always resort to, I can just write the code and go with it. So that's what we see by working closely with a lot of Active Directory MIM administrators, how they are solving or approaching the problem. And it's the aspect of legacy mindset as well, right? I think which, new modern, IGA solution like Saviynt has been trying to change, right? With the no code, low code type of a model, which are easy to maintain.
Very well, very well. And I think, if I could see the faces of people here listening to us today, I'd see a lot of people agreeing on that, right? So it is a challenge to just have this inefficiency, legacy things we got to talk about, but also carry forward, right? So this is also a barrier to innovation. So we either fix the technical debt or we look into innovation. So it is a big dilemma to a lot of leaders, I imagine. And for the young kids, if implementing IAM, right, what I hear here, customization, be careful, don't customize it too much. Speaking of which, let's talk about recommendations then, right? So I think the problem is very well understood. Look at this, right? So 33%. So it's interesting that the small organizations will be spending 27% fixing this type of technical debt. Large organizations even worse, 40%. But what are the big takeaways in terms of learnings? What can we recommend to the audience here today, right? So I can imagine, Arthur, Nitin, things that they should avoid, right? So like kids, don't customize it too much. But what else? What else can we recommend here to the audience in terms of how should they handle this technical debt, which I think may be inevitable for now, but there might be a better way into the future.
Yeah, maybe I can start with a couple points. I think first, recognizing that you need to migrate. I mean, that kind of sounds simple, but recognizing you need to migrate and making sure you have the proper senior leadership support to do that, and that they understand the importance of why. Right? Like, we know it's end of life, but is that the only reason why you're migrating over? Like Saviynt, great solution, known for its governance and compliance. Anything you're doing in MIM right now probably does not come close to that. All right? Do they understand the wins they're going to get with that? In terms of a quick maybe checklist of items of what you should do when you're planning the implementation, I'll maybe speak later about KeyData's 4-step approach, but I think just in plain layman terms, what people maybe could quickly take away is, before even jumping into anything, Saviynt is a system that's going to be ingesting data from your authoritative source, right? It typically, hopefully, is an HR system like SuccessFactors or Workday. Make sure that you actually have as clean of data going into it as possible, right? Do all your employees have accurate UPNs? Does everybody have an employee ID? Active Directory also. If you're on MIM, obviously you have Active Directory. Do you have orphaned accounts? Do you need to do some sort of cleanup? Any terminated employees that still reside in your environment? Funny enough, you can use PowerShell to get that info. And don't underestimate step one being do a little bit of cleanup. I cannot stress that enough. And you've heard the saying, garbage in, garbage out. You don't want to be exacerbating your problem in your new system, right? Especially when you have the higher up signing the checks. That's number one. And then number two, honestly and critically evaluate your existing processes and workflows. Question, does this still make sense? Do my lines of business still need to be members of 200 different groups during birthright provisioning? Does that make sense? Are we cutting tickets to assignment queues where there's teams picking those up and then adding people manually to groups? Something we can very easily automate in Saviynt and immediately see cost savings. That's number two. And number three, starting with a phased implementation and something that is simple. Again, you always hear showing value. How do I get my senior execs, my CISOs, my CEOs on board with showing the value as per the initial investment they made? So again, keep it simple. You can onboard an application like AD in read-only mode where you have visibility into everybody across your organization and what access to groups they have. So if you skimmed a little bit on the cleanup part on step one, step three of literally leveraging Saviynt to onboard AD and read-only could be your saving grace too, because that'll show you another kind of part two place where you can do an additional cleanup. And then everything after that kind of follows through, whether it's identity lifecycle management, starting with offboarding, and then end-to-end provisioning, certification campaigns. Again, we can touch upon that later. I think those three big ones. Don't skim on performing initial cleanup. Have an honest evaluation of whatever you have right now, workflows, processes, customizations. Do they still make sense? I guarantee you not all of them do. And obviously, start with showing value add, right, of the Saviynt tool and what it can do.
So cleaning up before we start, right? So reviewing the workflows and the business processes, if they still make sense, and bring the value added stuff first. No, I think those are great advice. I think if I could package this everything together is like, hey, avoid the temptation of lift and shift, right? Which is a very tempting way of, okay, man, this is just too complex, right? And this sounds like, man, it's gonna be take me a long time. Just take what we have here, put it into a container, get that container running in a virtual machine in the cloud, right? Why is that bad, do you think, Nitin?
Absolutely. I think we should look at it as a transformational initiative than lift and just a re-architecting or retooling. Because of the end of life and all the legacy issues. I mean, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. This platform is not going to be invested into by Microsoft, right? So absolutely look at from the transformation point of view. And if you are looking from the transformation point of view, right, lift and shift might be a good concept in certain cases where you are maybe moving to cloud, moving your workloads to cloud. But in this case, we are talking about transforming a platform. And as we talked about, MIM has a history of being customized extensively, right, as part of the implementation over the years. So what if you lift and shift, you are shifting your tech debt, right, from MIM to a new platform. And one of the reasons that we want to do this transformation because we don't want to have that tech debt in first place, right? So it's absolutely not, I think, a wise strategy to kind of lift and shift anything from MIM. Obviously, like I think Arthur mentioned, you should spend time assessing, your current environment, right? And see how you can leverage, the new redesign the system in a way we are following the modern design principles of zero trust, of just in time, right? How you are leveraging the best practices of Saviynt to reduce the customizations that you have in the MIM environment, right? Saviynt offers, very specific use cases around industries, how to address those use cases without, writing any code per se, right? And it's very, easy to configure, those use cases. And it comes up with a lot of out-of-the-box connectors, right? So when we talk about data flow, within, across applications, whether it is hybrid, in on-premise or in cloud, those are very easy to do with out-of-box connectors and feature set available in Saviynt.
One thing if I can add on the lift and shift, actually, data mapping, that is going to be one of the critical first things when you get to the build phase, right? And when you have to have a schema between HR, Saviynt, and AD to bring over the stuff that you still feel is necessary, that is where you're going to find that if you haven't done a cleanup, if you haven't holistically done a good review of what you need and what you don't, you're going to spend a lot of time there, right? Because from the customizations, you probably have a lot of calculated fields. There isn't, a one-trick pony tool that can accelerate you from potentially automating your mapping from a MIM schema to a Saviynt schema. There's things out there that might help you do that, but every organization is different. So you're going to need eyeballs on that, right? So that kind of also stems from like the tech debt piece, but also that lift and shift approach, because typically when we come across that, you also hear, okay, well, when we do lift and shift, the very first thing you're doing is that mapping, right? And when you get into there, it's not going to be a very nice one-to-one mapping between what you had in MIM and what you had in Saviynt, right? So just wanted to add that piece as well.
No, guys, and of course it shows you've done this more than once, right? So how many times you've seen this happening, right? I would say, is it a vast majority of projects these days in identity? It is a migration from something that exists, correct?
Yeah, whether it's MIM, whether it's custom in-house, whether it's a whole bunch of tools that an organization has customized together that holds like bits and pieces of different identity attributes, and they're like, wait, now we want to combine this because we need governance, right? But again, the biggest driver of your success, I believe, is like the quality of your data. I mean, that seems cliche, but you cannot underestimate that. People don't like talking about that. It's not like sexy because, you know, it doesn't make money. But if you mess that part up, that will extremely hinder the success of a migration project to a tool like Saviynt. And likely when you do move over to Saviynt, you're not going to then be leveraging all of the great features it has, right?
What
So,
other? And I agree. I agree. And I've been there. I'm old enough. I remember perhaps 20 years ago, and I think it's still true. Situation. I was deploying this IJ project, and I think it was a week before go live, and we started to test workflows for access request. It didn't work. It didn't work because the data we ingested was missing the email of all the managers. So you couldn't trigger workflows, basic stuff like that, and we missed it, right? What other things? What perhaps rule of thumb things that people should avoid? This is a big one. Sanitizing the data that you're working with, right? Good quality on the data. But what other big rule of thumbs of things to avoid? You guys think, or you can remember from your past experiences?
yeah, one thing that I can maybe speak to there is your approach to how you're going to do this migration. We've had customers come in and say, you know, we have X budget, we need it done by X date, and we want lifecycle management. We want these 50 apps onboarded, and we need it in the next year.
Oh, big bang,
right?
Big bang
Big
approaches.
bang, exactly.
Oh,
so
I hate those. I hate
big bang.
those.
Yes, big bang approach I would shy away from. Now, sometimes there could be justification for that. I'd say like 9 times out of 10, no. We definitely try to. Again, this is where like our road mapping comes in, where we'll show you a journey that, again, is most realistic for you to get a successful migration done, right? So we talked about the HR system cleanup. When you actually get into the build phase of it, like what do I start doing first? What do I move over first? Typically, you're going to start, obviously, again, connecting your HR system, likely onboarding Active Directory, and then where do you go from there? From a compliance and governance standpoint, and again, the bread and butter of Saviynt offerings is you probably want to start with your offboarding, because nothing is worse than having somebody still have access to some minute finance report or some application that they can still get into, and whatever cert campaigns you were running never caught that, right? So when it comes to the build and it comes to a identity lifecycle management and our JML workflow, start with offboarding, right?
Good. And I like how we highlighted perhaps the things to avoid first, right? So avoid lift and shift, avoid this extreme customization, avoid this big bang approaches. But now you started to, okay, there's a better way of solving this, right? So a phased approach, for example. What will be the things that we've seen it's in that works well? I say, hey, do it this way, because number one, we can learn a lot from mistakes of others, but also I can imagine we can learn from a lot of right decisions that were made.
Absolutely, and I think phase approach is one of the methodology that we always follow, right? Especially based on the complexity of the implementation. If as part of the assessment, if you realize the implementation is of low complexity, then it's obviously makes sense to hash it out very quickly. But often, due to the customizations and the extensive reach of where you're connecting with the application, the data flow, right? It's advisable to take an phase approach where you ingest data into Saviynt and start to leverage Saviynt capabilities around risk visibility, right? Saviynt comes out of the box to give you visibility into what are your dormant accounts, what are your orphan accounts, what are your high privilege access, right? How people are getting access to those high privilege accounts, and I think it is you should start to one of the key problem with IGA project and implementation migration with uh, programs is ability to show value, right, quickly and continuously. And this is where I think this big bang approach is kind of doesn't work in business sense, because you spend a lot of time migrating from one platform to another and not adding additional value to your organization, right? So by adopting and phase approach, you can try to identify what are the continuous value you're providing to a business in each phase. Maybe it is certification, maybe it is improved user experience, maybe it is better risk visibility, right? Maybe it is part of your larger digital transformation initiative, where you are addressing governance problems of your business critical application as a first step, right? So I think it's important to tie your migration initiative as much as possible to the bigger initiative tied with your business objectives, and make sure you are hitting those objectives in a continuous manner.
And that's a great point, Nitin. And Arthur, what would you say if I was a CISO, right? And Nitin presented me this approach. I said, yeah, I understand, but you know what? I really this thing is so big. Let's imagine I'm a bank. I have 20,000 employees, this huge legacy stuff, and I say, Arthur, this is just too much for us, right? Just the assessment alone will take me 6 months. What would you recommend to this client, right? If I say, no, let's do a lift and shift. Let's do a lift and shift, and we'll at least we get some time to think about this problem. How would you help that leader to shift their way of thinking?
Well, the way I've done this in the past is the proof is in the pudding. So,
okay.
We have had lift and shift forced down our throats, for lack of a better term. And oftentimes, I mean, the one time I can recall clearly with one of our financial institutions is it rather backfired. So maybe I'll give a little bit of a quick 2-minute backstory to what actually happened.
So would you let the client fail? Okay, see, I told you. Or
so yeah, so I think this is where you're. I like to call it here internally with my team, if you can speak like a politician, you're one step ahead. So the way I would approach it is like, you really want to, in the first kind of set of meetings when you're speaking with the CISO or trying to get them to convince, like, where do you start, or for you to have a good understanding of where to start, you really need to understand their business well. They want to get off of Saviynt. They want to get onto this new IGA tool, right? But what is driving that decision? And if sometimes they're having a hard time to express what is the value add they're trying to get out of it, but it's usually you can pinpoint it to something, right? Again, for MIM, is it just, well, because we have to, or is it because I want automated access reviews, pre-built reports, reduced risk exposure with features that are available out of the box in a tool like Saviynt? So honing in on that is critical. And then you double down on that. I personally like to engage Saviynt to either host a quick 15, 20-minute demo, use KeyData's demo environment to sell them on the fact that, hey, whatever you're doing in MIM right now, whether it's an access review, which is probably manual, and you're doing it in some sort of Excel sheets, look how we can simplify it in Saviynt. Look at the UI experience you have. It just makes more sense. It's not as hard as you think. And that goes back to the phased approach, right? Of course, all of this is overwhelming. And where do I start? Understanding that key factor as to why they're shifting, demonstrating how Saviynt solves that problem, and then selling them on the additional feature sets that they'll get out of this new IGA tool, I think is critical, or the way I would approach that conversation of getting that CISO's buy-in.
That's great. That's great. And Nitin, back in my day, perhaps 25 years ago, I hear was a very common approach to say, hey, I want to hire a consulting firm, and we do this role-based RBAC project. We're not touching technology, but we're doing this for like a year, 12 months, 18 months, and then we'll touch technology. Is this still applicable these days, 2025? Is this the type of approach we would recommend?
No, I would say I think we have come a lot further from what we used to do earlier, right? RBAC or used to be a very expensive exercise. It's mostly used to be top down. We are talking to business, collecting requirements. In Saviynt, I think we have built sort of ML based approach. We call it intelligence baked into IGA, right? So system has inherent capability to understand what access are assigned to users based on various parameters. It's not just one or two static parameters like job code manager. System analyzes pretty much all aspects of user profile and understand what access is assigned and how it is assigned, and then try to provide recommendations, right? So I think it solves a lot of problem that's where we needed roles. I think the initial objective of creating roles was we want to simplify the user experience, how people are requesting access. We don't want to request them access to 20 applications. They should just request one role, finance analyst, and I get everything, right? So that's the problem, right? We are solving by saying that system has inherent intelligence to recommend what access you need, more of a Netflix type model, right? Where you get recommendation based on your profile, role, location, your cost center. We think that you need access to this particular application, this entitlement in that application, right? And we have seen customers resonating very well to this idea. I mean, there's a very large insurance company, here in the US, who really appreciated the thought process of, the challenges with role, the maintenance of the role, ongoing basis. They had about 15,000 roles in the organization, and there were 12 people supporting maintaining those roles, right? There's a cost of maintenance of role as you created with RBAC, which kind of, this intelligence-based system kind of eliminates, that cost entirely for you.
No, and that's great. So what you're telling here, and the way I hear it is, yeah, and of course, AI is not new, right? ML, these things are not new, but the way it became mainstream is new, right?
Yes.
ChatGPT was what, 2022, right? Before that, we had to resort to interviewing people, right? And Excel spreadsheets. And I can understand how people say, I don't want to touch that. It sounds scary, sounds expensive, and time consuming, right? Arthur, a question for you. So another thing that I used to see in the past was approaches that were we used to call a coexistent of the old and the new, right? It's never like a clear cut. I think that ties back to big bang approaches as well, right? So I remember recommending clients, and no, you gotta keep those two together, and you do the migration. Is that the way? Still modern projects are they happening that way as well?
Yeah. So that's actually a good point, because that is actually one way during a migration where you keep tech debt. If you keep both systems running too long in parallel, and we have come across that, because flipping the switch off can be scary, and I think, being full disclosure, you will have problems. Once you flip that switch off, you will have problems. So again, narrowing it down to MIM, we've done several MIM integrations to Saviynt. In MIM, anything like your HR export imports, any of your AD export imports, all of those jobs need to be turned off when you enable workflows in Saviynt. Again, the tried and tested true approach to try to be as close to 99.9% bulletproof, so that you don't go past that 2, I'd say 3 weeks max, running in parallel. Again, phased approach comes in, but typically we see 2 to 3 weeks running in parallel. Right? The only way you can really try and mitigate or limit the amount of bugs you'll have in that first week or two post cutoff, like post full cutoff, is you really want to work with people in the organization thoroughly on testing. Very much underrated. And a lot of times it's like, hey, KeyData, do you have, all the test cases we should run? Sure, we can give that to you. We have, I'd say, probably between 30 and 50 based on specific workflows that we think you should test, right? Anything else that has come up during the requirements, anything that we've done in this particular phase of build, all of that also needs to be included in that. But 100%, we have seen that. We actually recommend you're going to need to run it in parallel in a lot of cases.
For a short while, right?
For a short while.
Have a plan to shut off that legacy one, right? It's not like a forever thing. Otherwise, you're paying double licenses. It's
exactly. Yeah. And again, I can't stress enough. I think a 2 to 3 week run in parallel, at least for your critical, again, life cycle processes when they're ready to go, right? You can enable offboarding, but still do onboarding potentially through MIM, right? But once you have, your process ready, any subsequent or comparable job that did that particular task, whether it was automated group addition, some sort of birthright, whatever it was doing, you got to just shut it off. You've done the testing, you feel good, turn it off. But know that the expectation is like you're going to have some ad hoc bug fixing without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Very well. It makes me remember, Nitin, a client of ours, this huge airline, which I think I think you shared it in this news to me, I think, or somebody. But yeah, we were going through the same challenge. Was Arthur more than 100,000 employees, and finally, I think this week they cut off the old tool, no more licenses, so it was a big relief for everybody. What else do you guys think works well? So I see the old ways of and the way you describe, Nitin, on the RBAC approaches, right? Goes back to the data problem Arthur brought up earlier. For me, sounds like, okay, technology has evolved, and we can use the actual new tool that you may be evaluating to clean up the data. Use the analytics, use the AI that comes with this tool to onboard these applications, to onboard those users, and to clean up while you do that. So is that what you're saying when you describe the way you describe the new modern migrations, Nitin?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think data cleanup is important. You can't just have garbage in and expect garbage out, but it's more of a continuous effort as well, right? Ongoing basis in terms of enriching your metadata, right? Or launching continuous review cycles based on the risk of the people carrying that access, right? Enabling your managers to understand why they should be certifying. So it's a cycle where you ingest data into Saviynt, you run certification with user managers, entitlement owners, and make sure that using the smart assist of Saviynt, you have the revoke rates that are driving to remove unnecessary access that people carry over a period of time, and then leverage intelligence to make sure that people are requesting the access they need, right? And implementing risk-based policies where people are not getting access to like static access to critical systems or entitlements in the environment. So start leveraging just-in-time processes, start leveraging elevated models where you assign particular access only for a certain time. So over a period of time, you will start to see a shift where you had a lot of cluttered data, people have access to everything. But with these processes, the shift will be more people have what they need to do their job at minimum, and they start to you start to create more entitlements and profiles that people can request only for the time they need to do that particular job. Like that's where you want your industry to go towards.
And speaking of tools that can be used to accelerate, right, or we call like accelerator packages and stuff like that. And perhaps that's the next slide on this presentation here, but for MIM in particular, right, or other legacy tools, have we built something together, either with KeyData or other consulting firms, to accelerate this type of data migration, data cleaning, and modernization in general, Nitin?
Absolutely. I think we have assessment tools, utilities, right, that will go and assess the complexity of the implementation in your environment. Uh, you know, in terms of how many rules you have, how many custom management agents you have, what are the complexity of it, what customizations you have done, right? And we have also leveraging Saviynt built AI across the board, not just for MIM, right, for other legacy tools as well, that can translate that information so that into steps like if you have certain rule in MIM, what would you need to do in Saviynt to configure similar logic, right? So we are building that platform which will ease out the time it takes to assess your current environment and translate into what you need to do in Saviynt. So that's being you know we're working on.
So that's a tool available to all clients?
That's right. I mean, it's available to all clients, and we use it as part of our assessment where we work with customers.
How about you,
And our
Arthur?
partners as
What
well.
has KeyData? Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
And partners as well, as I'm saying.
Yeah. No, very well. And how about you, Arthur, at KeyData? What do you guys have built? Or I know there's a guide or something like that, right? That you guys have put together for those type of migrations.
Yeah. So we have a MIM off-ramp which I'll briefly speak to in a minute, and probably will share the download link. But I think one thing that we've at least talked about internally, and we mentioned it earlier about the whole data mapping, is looking to provide at least, I'd say, developing this in PowerShell, a base extract where we can automate a mapping, or what a mapping should look like from MIM to Saviynt. Because what we have noticed from the implementations that we've done is that we do burn a lot of time at that phase of the project, and that is obviously near the beginning of the project, right? So that is one accelerator that KeyData is kind of focused on developing and making sure that we have essentially available by end of calendar year. And then, yes, the MIM off-ramp. So we have a nice 7 to 8 pager with some nice graphics. That speaks to, how can you start your journey? And we have this assess, plan, build, iterate model, much of what we spoke to already, but I really want to focus on the iterative piece, where I think that's where the strong partnership between KeyData and Saviynt comes in, and where KeyData as a system integrator stands out by getting you ready for your MVP release and all those iterative and phased releases afterwards. How do we do that? By understanding your business, the reasons you want to move over, and working closely with Saviynt to meet your needs as best as possible through roadmap development. Whether that is a 1-year journey, a 3-year journey, a 5-year journey, everything catered to the requirements specific to your org. We mentioned a couple key items that kind of apply across the board. KeyData really tries to hone in on that iterative approach specific to you at the end of the day, the client, right? Because at the end of the day, there will be caveats, there will be differences. Do we rinse and repeat a lot of stuff? Yes. But I'm sure there will be new stuff that we come across that we need to solution for, and we want to make sure we know those ahead of time as best as possible.
Awesome. And guys, the way I see this, right? So it is almost like this latent time ticking bomb, right? And but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like that. When we're dealing with software or hardware, anything that can depreciate, right? I think as part of a leader that is in charge of this type of assets, you got to plan for decommissioning and modernization in a continuous way. Right? And I've come across discussions with leaders here at Saviynt or my previous life at Gartner, and I say, you can't just set it forget, whatever it is, right? But it's like when you get a lease to a new car. Oh, I have this brand new Tesla. You know when the lease is up. You already have in your mind, okay, when this lease is up, those are the type of things I'm going to be looking for in my new car, right? And I think a lot of times when things don't go well, is that a lot of organizations are so busy, right? And not their fault, but there's so many things they need to tackle and say, well, my lease is up. This car is completely outdated and I need to choose a new car in 2 months. And then you make a bad decision. How many times we see that happening, right? And then it's, oh man, and then you get all this buyer remorse. So I should have did some more research. So this is all to tell a point that 3-4 years, it is not a lot of time to do research, to plan ahead, to find out what we have and assess, right? So it is what we're trying to do here today in this session is avoid the time ticking bomb effect. Like, don't make this decision 2 months before it expires, right? Before your lease expires.
Yeah.
And
so if I may, right? So I think logically there are no. I don't think that 3 years as well. I mean, end of life is one problem. But we are at a very critical juncture with AI. The usage of AI is rapidly growing. All businesses are trying to understand how they want to leverage AI to grow their business. What it means is that they're going to be, exponentially increase in the number of agents in your environment, bots in your environment, non-human entities, and you really want to understand how AI is accessing critical information in your organization, right?
Yeah.
I think this will change very rapidly in next year, 2 years, and it will have a huge impact on how we look at security today. And so you probably really need to start thinking about it now if you're not already, before it's too late. And make sure your anti strategy is in alignment with how you want to support AI, non-human entities, and everything around it.
I agree, Nitin, because yes, end of life, it's an easy, it has a date, it's an easy calendar thing. You put in a calendar, it's easy to justify that, right? But there's so many other things. For example, I remember one time a client, and we're talking about a SaaS solution. They had a SaaS solution, and identity provider was an SSO solution, and say, Henrique, I need an off ramp out of this because of different reasons. Guys, it could be because of breaches or whatever. I need to tell a story to the board that, hey, I have a plan B. If this thing goes south, if you don't have a plan B to this asset, especially if it's legacy assets, I think it's a very risky proposition as a strategy, right? So having that plan B, because this is not like a marriage, right? When I got married to my wife, no, I'm going to stay with that woman forever. But this type of situation, you got into those life cycle of software that we know, especially on-prem, they have a life shelf of 5 years, 6 years maximum, and then they need completely revamp. Speaking of which, next slide, I think, talks about that, right? So a little bit of a call to action here, because when we, after this one, when we think about this, yes, technology evolves, but also all the learning opportunities that we have from mistakes made in the past, but also things that we got right in the past. So KeyData built this asset here, which encapsulates, right, almost like this yellow brick road to success, which I think it's just going to save us a lot of headaches, and our clients, they can save a lot of headaches. You're going to say, hey, this is a try-through path that works in hundreds of cases that we saw this before. As much as we want to believe that each organization is different, yes, to Arthur's point, you're gonna find fringe use cases. You're gonna find those edge situations where quite different. But there is best practices. There is a kind of rule of thumb that we can learn from 20, 30 years of experience doing this type of migrations, right? Any last thoughts here, Arthur, on this migration guide? So my point here to the audience is, guys, KeyData, those guys, they have done it before. If you want to shift into something modern like Saviynt, yeah, you got to give those guys a guy, go give them a call Arthur, call Nitin here, because they can share a lot of learning experiences from the past. What do you think, Arthur?
Yeah, most definitely. No, if I can leave the audience with anything, it's that there's that 2029 deadline, but nobody ever died missing a deadline. But it sure as hell is going to cost you a lot more money. So the earlier you start, the better. So please feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. Share my number, reach out. More than happy to assist, even if it's just a casual conversation. So I appreciate everybody joining today. Henrique doing the moderating, really appreciate always. Love being a part of chats, Nitin as well. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening and staying through for till the end here.
Thank you, Nitin. Any last thoughts?
Absolutely, I think it's a critical, initiative for most organizations. Feel free to reach out to KeyData and Arthur and team, or reach out to Saviynt in terms of how you can modernize your R&D strategy.
Awesome. And guys, we're gonna have like another 5 minutes for Q&A. I did receive a few questions here on the chat, but for the audience, if you have one last question you want to ask the amazing speakers that sat down here today with us, that will be our pleasure. So let me start from the top here. Any real world experiences or examples where clearing IAM technical debt led to sustained business growth? that you guys can remember? I can remember of a few instances even before I joined Saviynt, but any real world examples where like cleaning this technical debt allowed your clients to sustain business growth?
Yeah, I have one that sticks out that was I'd say a quick win. So one of our clients had a 10-person dedicated team for literally actioning tickets and specifically onboarding tickets on a day-to-day basis, large-scale organization. So hiring manager, goes in, does their access requests through, won't name the interface that they were using, and this gets sent to queues that this team picked up, and literally the job was adding them to Active Directory groups, right? So that is something that if you are still doing that today, you are very behind the 8 ball, right? We brought in Saviynt, all of that was able to be automated, right? Based on a user update, anything that's triggered. So if your user is created in Workday, based on a set of attributes, whether it's their job code, their line of business, that'll trigger Saviynt to make all of the necessary calls needed at birthright to add them, whether it's to necessary groups, make sure that they have the proper group membership for their default exclaimer signature, what have you. It completely eliminated the need to have those 10 people do that as one of their primary job responsibilities. And then, might be thinking, like, were those people out of a job? No, those people were just able to be better leveraged in other areas, whether it was to redesign additional workflows, pick up knowledge on Saviynt. So it wasn't just, hey, we're going to automate and we're going to boot everybody else out. No, those people's value to the organization substantially increased by removing that barrier of pretty much doing a manual-like task for the majority of their time.
Very well, very well. It did touch on the second question because, and this is a funny one. I mean, well, this I like the way this person was thinking, like, oh, glass half full, right? So with all the money, with all this new cash they're gonna make by optimizing legacy stuff, what would you do with that money? Where would you invest it? Right, to your point, right? So yeah, you're gonna learn new things. I can think of a lot of things I'll do with this extra resources, extra money I got here. It's free money. So Nitin, what would you do with that free money that is saved by a modern IAM implementation?
Absolutely. And I think, IAM teams are the most busiest team, right, in the entire organization. They have a lot of responsibility. So if they can free up their time, I think there are a lot of key business initiatives that they can, spend time into. For example, right, one of the key challenges that we face across customers is the adoption of their IAM platforms, which boils down to onboarding applications, right? So I think that should be the top of their priority. How can they accelerate onboarding of applications, work with various business units, leverage the technology provided by Saviynt, and have a broader scale of applications on board on Saviynt, so they can get benefit, right? The benefit of the technology you're purchasing is based on the data you are ingesting in it. So the more applications you have in Saviynt, you can start to realize benefit across those applications, start to see risk visibility across those applications, and streamline user experience, right? Yeah, I think, and then of course, how do you play a role in digital transformation? Look at your key initiative across organization. There are a lot of value-added stuff that the team can spend to work on. AI is on the horizon. We were just talking about
AI,
what their AI strategy going to look like.
Machine identities, right?
Machine identity, yes. Now we can go on for hours just talking about it, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think the key is to allow the team to focus on those activities instead of working on the tech debt and doing the mundane jobs.
I agree, and thank you for the question because it was such a fun question. Hey, what do you do with free money, right? It's always nice to imagine what we could do with that, and but also to your point, if we are replacing legacy or something outdated, it is likely that it was not touching on those new areas that we need to handle. So by freeing up the time, freeing up the resources, and this additional resources we have, I can guarantee the attack surface is bigger, right? It is bigger than just the old data center of 10 years ago, right? So we have all this new stuff about machine identities, all this new stuff about AI, and it'll be plenty of work for everybody to tackle that. We are reaching top of the hour. It's been a tremendous pleasure. Arthur, thank you. Thank you, KeyData, for the partnership with Saviynt here. Everything you guys are doing. Keep fighting the good fight. Nitin, always a pleasure to catch up. I always like listen to your stories from the trenches and from the field. It really lights up my day. Guys, thank you for the audience. Thank you for the questions. It's been very fun. Thank you very much, and let's go modernize those legacy, guys. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye bye.